Nothing is ever quite as it seems, is it? London, Buckingham Palace. Sunlight glinted off the golden gates as tourists pressed against the bars, hoping to steal a peek inside the royal residence. The air was a mix of scents. Fresh-baked croissants from street vendors, warm asphalt, and the crisp coolness of a spring breeze. The murmur of the crowd mingled with snippets of conversations in different languages, the click of cameras, and the occasional burst of children's laughter. Motionless, like a statue, a British guardsman stood before the palace. Tall, fit, with sharp facial features. He was clad in the traditional red tunic with gold buttons, black trousers, and boots polished to a mirror shine. His face was hidden beneath a massive bearskin hat, giving him an air of unshakable discipline and unwavering duty to the crown. In his right hand, he gripped a sheathed sword, not a weapon for battle, but a symbol of authority, discipline, and honor. Honor. The surrounding crowd behaved as expected. Tourists kept their distance, pointed at the guard, whispered to one another, and snapped selfies. Even the most carefree visitors showed a degree of respect, but not Karen. She stood out not just in attitude but in appearance. Karen, a 45-year-old American woman, was full-figured with bright pink hair tied into a high ponytail, messy strands sticking out. Her face radiated smug confidence, her lips curled into a self-satisfied smirk. She was dressed boldly, tight leopard print leggings emphasizing her wide hips, and a stretched-out t-shirt that read, "I do what I want," leaving no doubt about her attitude. In one hand, she held a plastic cup of soda, nearly empty, but she loudly slurped the last drops through her straw, making an obnoxious gurgling noise. Then, with a wet smack, she pulled the straw from her mouth and lazily wiped her lips with her palm. The crowd was minding its own business, but that wasn't enough for Karen. She wanted attention. She scanned her surroundings and spotted her companion, a thin, red-haired woman in her 40s hiding behind oversized sunglasses. Unlike Karen, she seemed uncomfortable, standing slightly apart, pretending she didn't know her. But Karen didn't notice or didn't care. She stepped forward with confidence, raised her voice, and provocatively declared, "These British guards are just clowns, standing here like robots." Several people turned their heads, staring at her in confusion, but Karen loved the attention. She felt like the main star of the show. She stepped closer, her voice growing louder, bolder. "Honestly, I should check if he's even real." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some people chuckled, others frowned in disapproval. Karen noticed the reaction. Her smirk widened. She had her audience. What if I take his sword? What's he gonna do? Instantly, the air thickened with tension. Teenagers raised their phones. Cameras switched to video mode. An elderly couple with cameras shook their heads in disapproval. Some laughed, others turned away. Some whispered among themselves. But Karen wouldn't stop. She knew she had the crowd's full attention. With a dramatic flourish, she raised her hand and yelled, "All right then, watch this." The crowd froze. People instinctively stepped back, sensing something was about to go very, very wrong. Karen stepped forward, now dangerously close to the guard, her face twisted into a cocky grin, her eyes sparkling with thrill. She was basking in her own audacity, eagerly awaiting the crowd's reaction. The guard remained still, not a single muscle moved. His stance was flawless, his gaze fixed straight ahead. But Karen couldn't be stopped. She reached out, her fingers trembling with excitement. The crowd held its breath as she reached for the sword's hilt. Someone in the crowd muttered under their breath, "Is she seriously doing this?" But Karen was no longer thinking. She was acting. Buckingham Palace, London. The crowd stiffened. For a few endless seconds, the entire square seemed to fall silent. Even the wind stopped rustling through the trees. Karen's fingers wrapped around the sword's hilt. Her nails dug into her palm as she gripped the cold metal. She felt its weight, its smooth surface, the power contained within its structure. It lasted a fraction of a second, but in her mind, it was an eternity. And then she pulled. Instantly, everything erupted into motion. The guard came to life. A thunderous stomp echoed against the stone, a sharp, commanding, heavy impact. It felt like even the air trembled at his sudden movement. A blur of motion. His previously motionless arm snapped forward with unrelenting precision. A steel grip. Karen didn't have time to think, didn't have time to process. All she felt was pain. The guard seized her wrist with the precision of a machine, his grip like iron, as if he had locked her entire arm in place. A jerk. Her wrist twisted at an unnatural angle. Ah! Karen screamed tore through the air. The crowd collectively gasped. Shock. Frozen faces. The guard's voice boomed across the square, shaking the air like a war drum. Stand back immediately. His voice was cold, unforgiving. It sliced through the noise like a blade against stone. Karen choked on her breath, unable to move, her body locked in fear, her eyes darting wildly like a cornered animal. The crowd exploded into frantic energy. Did you see that? Get your phone, record it. Oh my God! What did she just do? Shutters clicked, cameras rolled. Karen jerked her hand away, stumbling back, clutching her wrist, now red with the imprint of the guard's grip, her face contorted with rage and pain. What the hell? She screeched, breathless. The guard did not move, not an inch. He had already returned to his position, as if nothing had happened, as if Karen didn't exist. Her jaw dropped, her mind reeled. He touched her. He dared to lay hands on her. This silent, arrogant British soldier had humiliated her. Karen stepped forward again, furious. The crowd buzzed. Someone chuckled. Oh my God! Is she really going for round two? She's so dumb. But Karen didn't hear them. She burned with humiliation. She couldn't let this slide. But she never got the chance. 2 security guards in black suits were already approaching. Ma'am, step back. The voice was firm. Karen froze, and in that instant, this stopped being a game. Buckingham Palace, London. The crowd buzzed, whispered, murmured. Some recorded videos. Others watched with awkward curiosity, and a few laughed openly. Karen was fuming. Her body shook with outrage. Her face was flushed red. Her throat was dry from shouting. But she wasn't backing down. Her chest heaved. Her eyes flashed with a mix of fury and adrenaline. She threw her arms in the air as if declaring war. I am a U.S. citizen. The reaction was instant. The crowd erupted in laughter. Some people snorted. Others covered their faces to stifle their giggles. But the laughter spread like wildfire. Karen didn't hear the mockery. In her mind, this was different. She wasn't just shouting. She was a brave woman standing up for justice. She was fighting for her rights. I will sue, she shrieked, her voice turning into a piercing screech. He hit me. The crowd stirred. Somewhere in the middle, a loud, mocking voice called out, You grabbed a sword, dumbass. The crowd exploded. A group of teenagers clapped sarcastically. A few people burst out laughing. In the U.S., you'd probably get shot for that. A man in a New York Yankees cap chuckled, shaking his head. Karen looked around. She searched for support. She expected to see at least a few people standing up for her. But instead, all she saw was a wall of smartphones, grinning faces, and disapproving stares. Everything had gone wrong. They didn't fear her. They didn't support her. They were mocking her. She refused to accept it. She couldn't lose, not like this. She straightened herself, shook her head, took a deep breath, and then screeched, I demand an apology. Her voice sliced through the air, making a few people in the crowd instinctively flinch. She stomped her foot. I want to speak to the manager of this palace. The crowd howled with laughter. Why not go straight to the Queen? Someone shouted, sending another wave of hysterics through the crowd. Someone zoomed in on their phone camera. On the screen, Karen's furious, contorted face filled the frame, her hair flying in all directions, her cheeks burning red, her eyes wild with rage. Karen didn't hear the laughter. She only heard herself. She knew that if she backed down now, it was over. She had to finish this fight. But security had other plans. 2 security guards in black suits had been watching the spectacle in silence. They weren't laughing. They weren't whispering. They were just waiting until now. The moment Karen threw her arms up again, one of them, a tall man with a square jaw and dark sunglasses, gave a small nod to his partner. One tiny nod. That was all it took. No words, no discussion. The decision was made. The tall guard stepped forward, his stride slow but confident, deliberate. There was no emotion, just calm inevitability. For the first time, Karen hesitated. Something tightened in her chest. She didn't understand why, but she felt it. You are leaving the premises immediately. It was like a lightning bolt hit her. Her mouth fell open. Her breathing hitched. She had no words. What? Her voice cracked, suddenly high-pitched and sharp. She tried to step back, but bumped into someone in the crowd. She spun around, looking for allies, but there were none, just smartphones, just a crowd waiting for the grand finale. You have no right. The guard didn't flinch. I am a U.S. citizen. I can do whatever I want. The crowd shook with laughter. Cameras flashed. Phones kept rolling. They would remember this forever. Without a change in expression, the guard stated coldly, "No, you cannot." And then he grabbed her elbow. Karen froze. Everything had gone wrong, completely wrong. Buckingham Palace, London. Karen yanked her arm back, but it was too late. The guard's firm grip held her in place. The second security officer, a stone-faced man in sunglasses, had already positioned himself on the other side, blocking any escape. She struggled. She twisted. She tried to break free, but her movements were weak, pathetic. They dragged her. No words, no explanations, no ceremony. The crowd parted, giving them space, but no one looked away. Karen, stumbling, was marched toward the gates of Buckingham Palace. And then the laughter began, loud, unrestrained. Someone whistled, someone cheered, someone clapped as if watching a circus act. Karen couldn't believe it. Her cheeks burned with shame. Her eyes darted across the crowd, desperately searching for one sympathetic face. But everyone was laughing. Smartphones lit up her path of shame. The final verdict. As they reached the gates, the guards halted behind them. The crowd buzzed, but the line had been drawn. The security officer released her arm, but he didn't step back. His face was indifferent, as if he were merely closing the door on an unruly passenger. And then he spoke. "You are banned from the premises." The words hit Karen like a hammer. She snapped her head up. "What?" She blinked, stunned. "What?" Her voice wavered. She looked around, no outrage, no protests. The crowd was grinning. The laughter hadn't stopped. "You have no right." Karen stepped forward, but the guard didn't even move. His sunglasses-covered eyes seemed to look right through her. "I am a U.S. citizen. I can do whatever I want." The crowd roared. Someone clapped, someone shouted. Try that at the White House. The laughter was everywhere. The cameras kept rolling. Karen realized she was being filmed, but she hadn't yet realized she had lost. The guard shook his head. "No, you cannot," and firmly took her arm again. Karen froze. The fear hit her. Her second chance was gone. It was over. And then the internet made sure it would never be forgotten. Want to know what happened to Karen next? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. In my next video, I'll tell you the rest of the story. It might just be the part that made this whole thing go viral.